Hello all, I'm Sai and you're watching The Book Dragon. Today I'm bringing to you one of my most requested videos in the past 2 months, and it is how to read the Shadowhunter Chronicles. Now personally I finished reading the Shadowhunter Chronicles in July, which is last month, and I needed some time in order to let all the things settle and discuss with you guys the various orders in which you can read the books. Since there are totally 19 books as of now in the series and there are at least 5 more to get released in the further years, I'm sure it will be difficult and confusing for many people who are going to try and get into the series as a whole. I totally have 4 orders in which you can read all the 19 books put together, of which one is the order in which I read, and I'd personally not recommend that. So I'm going to discuss the first 3 orders in the beginning, and then at last I'll be talking about the order in which I read the books. So without any further ado, let's get into the video right away. Now the Shadowhunter Chronicles is a collection of 19 books which consists of 5 different series, and each and every series happens during different parts of time in our original world itself. And since it's urban fantasy, we have 2 worlds which exist parallelly. One is the world in which we live in, and the other is the world in which all these stories take place. There are also 3 short story collections within these 19 books, and I'd suggest you to read the short story collections separately instead of reading them in between the series, because at times it might confuse the order in which you are reading. In the order of publication, the first series that was published is The Mortal Instruments, which is a collection of 6 books and starts with City of Bones, and it happens in 2007 and in the beginning of 2008, where we follow 16-year-old Clary Frey, who on her 16th birthday finds out the existence of this parallel world called the Shadow World, and she is swept into it and gets to know that she's a Shadowhunter. All the other series within the Shadowhunter Chronicles are trilogies, and of these the second one is the Infernal Devices, which starts with Clockwork Angel, in which we see our main character Tessa Gray, who's 16 years old again, and she moves from New York to London in the 1800s in order to meet her brother because their guardian has died and they are going to make a living in London. While she moves into London, she is kidnapped by some people into the downworld and ends up being saved by the Shadowhunters, and her story is explored. The next one is the Dark Artifices, which starts with Lady Midnight. This is definitely the most well written of all series so far, and this one happens in 2012, 5 years after the end of the Mortal Instruments. And here we see our main character Emma Carstairs, who's 17 years old, and she is in this quest to avenge the death of her parents. As a result of finding the person who killed her parents, the huge sophisticated plot of the Dark Artifices is revealed, and we follow on with the further books. The next series is the Eldest Curses, which starts with the Red Scrolls of Magic, and this series starts in between the Mortal Instruments after the end of the 3rd book, and each and every book in the series happens during different time periods of the entire Shadowhunter Chronicles, and it is not happening continuously year after year. And here we focus on one of the most important pairs in the Shadowhunter Chronicles, who are Magnus Bane and Alec Lightwood. The next series is the Last Stars, which happens after the end of the Infernal Devices, and it happens in the 1900s, starting with Chain of Gold. Here we see our main character Cordelia Carstairs, who moves into London. There have been less demon attacks in London for the past few years, hence the training of the young Shadowhunters of this generation is a bit dull compared to the other generations of Shadowhunters, and it is also a very mysterious series with a lot of characters. Now moving on to the reading orders, the first one which I suggest you to do is to read the books in the order that they were published, and this is definitely the best way to avoid any kind of spoilers, because you'll be reading the books as they were created and written, so there's no way you'll be spoiled for any of the future books in the series as well. For that, you'll have to start with the Mortal Instruments, read the first 3 books, and then switch in between the Mortal Instruments and Infernal Devices, then move on to the Dark Artifices and read the Eldest Curses and Last Stars at last. So the order for this will be City of Bones, City of Ashes, City of Glass, Clockwork Angel, City of Fallen Angels, Clockwork Prince, City of Lost Souls, Clockwork Princess, City of Heavenly Fire, The Bane Chronicles, Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy, Lady Midnight, Lord of Shadows, Queen of Air and Darkness, The Red Scrolls of Magic, Ghosts of the Shadow Market, Chain of Gold, The Lost Book of the White, Chain of Iron. Now the 2 main pros of this reading order is that you'll be reading this series as it was written, so you'll definitely be avoiding all the spoilers in any way possible. And the second advantage is that you'll be able to see the progress in the writing of Cassandra Clare from how it was in City of Bones and how it is in the Large Stars. There are also 2 cons when it comes to reading them in this order. The first one is that it is a bit confusing because you'll have to switch in between series, and the second one is that it'll be so difficult for people who don't like to read 2 series happening within the same world parallelly. I am definitely one of such people, and I did not read the books in that order. Order number 2 would be to read them according to the series. So you will be starting with the Infernal Devices and read the first 3 books, but you'll have to keep one thing in mind if you have to just completely read it in the series order, that you should not read the epilogue of Clockwork Princess alone, and then you'll have to read the entire Mortal Instruments, all the 6 books, and before reading the epilogue of City of Heavenly Fire, you'll have to finish the epilogue alone of Clockwork Princess and then read the epilogue of City of Heavenly Fire. I'm sure that this will be confusing, so if you don't want to do it, it's totally okay. You can finish the Infernal Devices completely and then read the Mortal Instruments completely as well. But before jumping to the Dark Artifices from the Mortal Instruments, you'll have to finish Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy. I'm saying this because there's a huge gap of 5 years between the end of City of Heavenly Fire and the beginning of Lady Midnight. So Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy fills up this huge gap which exists between the two series, and there are also many things which happen within the short story collection of Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy itself. And after finishing the Dark Artifices, you can go and read the Eldest Curses and Last Stars in any way. You can read the Last Stars first or the Eldest Curses first. It doesn't matter which you read first because they'll not spoil each other. But my suggestion would be to finish the Last Stars and then go to the Eldest Curses, because the Last Stars books happen continuously, whereas the Eldest Curses books happen during different times during the entire timeline. So the order in which you can read the books by series is Clockwork Angel, Clockwork Prince, Clockwork Princess, City of Bones, City of Ashes, City of Glass, City of Fallen Angels, City of Lost Souls, City of Heavenly Fire, Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy, The Bane Chronicles, Lady Midnight, Lord of Shadows, Queen of Air and Darkness, Chain of Gold, Chain of Iron, The Red Scrolls of Magic, The Lost Book of the White, Ghosts of the Shadow Market. Now you might have noticed that I have added the Bane Chronicles after Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy and before Lady Midnight. This is because the Bane Chronicles will provide you a good break in between series, because it is not mainly tied in with any of the main series of the universe. You can definitely avoid reading the Bane Chronicles as well, but I'd highly suggest you to read it, because who will not want to read a book that focuses on Magnus Bane as the main character itself, right? And I've added Ghosts of the Shadow Market at last after reading all the books. This is because Ghosts of the Shadow Market ties in with all of the main series, so the best time to read it is to finish it after reading all the books, because if you read all the short stories in Ghosts of the Shadow Market continuously before finishing any of the series, it will end up spoiling at least one series for you. The third order will be to read the books chronologically, that is, as the events in the book take place. So you'll have to start with the main series, which is the Infernal Devices. After finishing the Infernal Devices, you'll have to read the Last Stars, and after the Last Stars, you'll be reading the Mortal Instruments' first 3 books. After that, you'll have to read the Red Scrolls of Magic, the second half of the Mortal Instruments, then Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy, and after that, you'll be reading the second book in the Eldest Curses, which is the Lost Book of the White, and finally end with the Dark Artifices. I have not included the Bane Chronicles and Ghosts of the Shadow Market in this order because all the short stories that happen within these two short story collections happen during different times of the entire timeline, so it will be a bit confusing. While you're reading in this order, there's a huge possibility that you will be spoiled for Lady Midnight, which is the first book in the Dark Artifices, because I read the Last Stars before reading the Dark Artifices, and Chain of Iron, which is the second book in the Last Stars, spoiled the first book in the Dark Artifices, which is Lady Midnight for me. So I'd recommend you to read the Last Stars after you finish reading the Dark Artifices. But if you don't care about that single spoiler, it's okay, you can definitely read it chronologically as well. Now, since these short stories happen during different timelines, I'll not be able to tell you the perfect order in which you'll be reading the short stories as well as the main books in the series in order to see the story as it happened rather than how it was written. So I have linked the interactive Shadowhunter timeline in the description. You can go and check that out, because in that timeline, each and every short story and each and every main series is chronologically ordered so that you can follow that order itself. As of now, it starts sometime during the Bane Chronicles and ends with the last short story of Ghost of the Shadow Market. So for this, the order will go like Clockwork Angel, Clockwork Prince, Clockwork Princess, Chain of Gold, Chain of Iron, City of Bones, City of Ashes, City of Glass, The Red Scrolls of Magic, City of Fallen Angels, City of Lost Souls, City of Heavenly Fire, Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy, The Lost Book of the White, Lady Midnight, Lord of Shadows, Queen of Air and Darkness, The Bane Chronicles, Ghosts of the Shadow Market. Now finally, after these 3 spoiler-free orders, I'm going to tell you about the order in which I read the books. I know that some of you guys will be interested, so this is how I read the books. City of Bones, City of Ashes, City of Glass, Clockwork Angel, City of Fallen Angels, Clockwork Prince, City of Lost Souls, Clockwork Princess, City of Heavenly Fire, The Bane Chronicles, Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy, Chain of Gold, Chain of Iron, The Red Scrolls of Magic, The Lost Book of the White, Lady Midnight, Lord of Shadows, Queen of Air and Darkness, Ghosts of the Shadow Market. Now the problem with this order was that I read Chain of Gold and Chain of Iron before I got to Lady Midnight. So because of the fact that there is a huge plot revelation which happens in Chain of Iron, it spoiled Lady Midnight for me. anyone on the internet did not talk about that at all while I saw all the reading order videos. It might also be due to the reason that Chain of Iron is the last published book so far, so many people might not have updated their reading orders, so that might be a reason why I got spoiled. So if you don't want to get spoiled, finish the Dark Artifices first and then go to the last task, because in that way I'm sure that you'll not get spoiled for any of the books. That was the only mistake that I made, and I hope you don't do it, so you can totally enjoy this entire journey. Now, if you ask me whether you have to read all the 3 short story collections or not, I'll say that they are not completely necessary, but if you want to experience the story completely, you'll have to read all the 3 short story collections. But there's no need to read all the short story collections in order to understand the series as a whole. All the information that you need to know from the short story collections is revealed briefly where it is necessary inside the main series itself. But if you ask me, reading them enhances the experience of entire series, and of the 3 short story collections, the most important one, if you ask me, is Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy, because it bridges the gap in between 2 series, and after that it will definitely be Ghosts of the Shadow Market, because it does bridge a huge gap between the Dark Artifices and the Wicked Powers, which is to release. So my suggestion would be to read all the 3 short story collections at least after you complete reading all the main series, because they will totally enhance the experience of reading the series as a whole. Now, these are not the only 4 orders in which you can read the entire series. There are also multiple other ways you can play with it and read all the 19 books put together without spoiling any of the other books. I could only think of these 4 orders, and I know that some of you guys have also finished reading all the 19 books. So if you have any other order other than these 4, please do let them in the comments below, so that other people who are looking out for new orders in order to read the series without getting spoiled at all can get use from them. And I'm sure that there will be at least one other better way of reading the books than the things which I have discussed in this video. So yes guys, those are the 4 orders in which you can read the Shadowhunter Chronicles, including the order in which I read. And I think that this video was informative and useful for you. And if you did enjoy watching this and find it useful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and also share it with your friends. If you want to get more content from me, do subscribe to the channel, because I publish new videos every Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.